Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Kelly here with Esri and I'd like to thank you and welcome you to our webinar today. So today we're going to be discussing national mapping strategies with Arcgis Pro. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our presenters today to introduce themselves and get us started.
Thank you, Kelly. My name is Mark Seigan. I'm the Director of National Mapping Solutions here at Esri, and I'm joined by my colleagues. David?
Oh, thanks, Mark. My name is David Watkins. I'm the Arcgis Product Manager for Arcgis Pro.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Grammer. I'm the Product Manager and I manage Arcgis Production Mapping and Arcgis Defense Mapping.
Hi, everyone. I'm GC Rice. I work with John on our topographic mapping team. And like you said, we're responsible for production mapping and defense mapping.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And we'll go ahead and get started here. Today, we're going to be looking at national mapping strategies to help us modernize on the latest GIS technology, specifically Arcgis Pro, and why now is the time to move from Arcmap to the modern web-based Arcgis Pro app. David will take you through the reasons to migrate to Arcgis Pro, the risks in not migrating as Arcmap is being deprecated, and the product line and the roadmap and the planning for that migration to Arcgis Pro. With John and GC, we'll look at automating data and cartographic workflows with Arcgis production mapping and defense mapping. You'll see how to leverage them to efficiently and cost-effectively produce standardized data to exacting quality and output requirements for your end-to-end production. And then we'll open it up for question and answer time. So as Kelly mentioned earlier, please type your questions into the questions window as we go along, and we'll get to as many as possible in the last third of the hour of our time together. So I think it's important right up front to recognize that many of you in national mapping and geospatial authorities are increasingly challenged by expanding stakeholder expectations on escalating variety of information products that are required from you by your customers. And you're increasingly expected to provide higher returns on investment made in your organizations. There's increasing requirements for better resolution or granularity of the data and the quality and the accuracy of your data. And all of this is happening in times of reduced budgets, and revenues, staff, and resources. And you're faced with shorter timeframes to deliver results. You've got reduced public understanding of the importance and the relevance of your organization. And really, to put it bluntly, your organizations are being asked to build better, faster, and cheaper. So why should you care about Arcgis Pro? Well, for starters, it allows you to do more with less. It enables you to modernize your staff and their information delivery by leveraging technology versus being behind the technology curve. It helps you be more responsive. It's speeding timely information to decision makers and key stakeholders. It increases your relevance as you expand the use of technology to better meet your customers' needs. And frankly, it will save you delivery time, money, and precious staffing resources by increasing your efficiency and expanding your capacity. And all of this while improving the accuracy and the engagement with your user community. So now we'd like to give you an opportunity to answer a few questions, which will help us know how to tailor this webinar to your needs. So please just tick the box that applies to your organization on this first question, and the other ones will allow multiple choice on them. But on this first one, so to what extent has your organization started to use Arcgis Pro? I see some of you are already starting to put your answers in there. We're going to give you a little bit of time here to do that. All right, so more than half of you voted. Thank you for that. And we see that about a third of you are primarily using Arcmap, and you're considering moving to Arcgis Pro. And we certainly have got content that we're going to cover today that will help you in that process. I can see about another third of you have begun to move your production to Arcgis Pro from Arcmap. So again, we're going to have strategies that may help you with that today. And for those of you that are using ArcGIS Pro now as your primary technology, I think you're still going to find that you're going to hear things today that are going to help you just to continue to maximize your use of ArcGIS Pro. So thanks for answering those. We're going to ask another second question here. So what are your largest barriers to your organization migrating from Arcmap to the ArcGIS Pro? And this is multiple choice. You can, if you've got a couple of things that you're facing here, barriers, just go ahead and put those in, click as many boxes as you think apply to you or your organization. All right, we're going to close it out here in just another second here. There we go. And thank you again for voting. This helps us help you in the process. So what we see is the majority of you, about 42%, are still concerned about Arcmap to the ArcGIS Pro equivalency. And we're going to address that today. I can see that another 40% of you have a lot invested in existing customization tools, and that's very common. And we hope to begin to address that today. And then we see it's kind of split about 25%, a little over, where we have invested a lot in existing scripting tools, as well as the last one, not able to get funding for keeping up with ArcGIS maintenance, which means it's going to be very difficult to take advantage of these tools. So thank you for that input. We're going to move along now and start to address some of these things that you talked about in the Pro here. So now I'd like to turn it over to David Watkins. Again, he's the ArcGIS Pro product manager. And David, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. So thank you for filling out all those poll questions. That's very helpful for us. And I'm going to talk to you about some strategies for migrating to ArcGIS Pro. It sounds like quite a few of you have just started or are planning to move. So first of all, why do you need to start worrying about moving to ArcGIS Pro? And I just wanted to throw this out there. About a year ago, we made an announcement that we would not be releasing an Arcmap or a desktop 10.9. So what does that mean for you? Well, that means that desktop 10.8 or 10.8x series is the current release of Arcmap, and that ties us to a product support lifecycle that runs out until March 1st, 2026. Now, 2026, that sounds like a long time still. That's what, 5 years away. That's going to go very fast. And in our world, we find that time moves very quickly, and we really want you to start thinking about moving, start working on moving now, because that time will run out in a hurry, and we want to make sure that you've moved, well prior to that, if possible. Another thing I just wanted to mention, so right now 10.8.1 is the current release that's available. We do have a 10.8.2 that's going to be coming out in December this year. That is a maintenance release only. The primary driver for that release is so users who need to be able to install a desktop machine on the same machine as their server machine will be able to do that with the 10.8.2 release. So if you have Enterprise 10.9.1, you'll be able to install 10.8.2 on the same machine. Other than that, there aren't any new bug fixes, or there are new bug fixes. There are not any new functionality changes in Arcmap 10.8.2. So now when that date hits, this doesn't mean that Arcmap will stop working on your machines. It will continue to run, but it will, you will no longer have support for it. And this, of course, affects Arcmap catalog, all the Arcmap extensions, including the production mapping tools that we'll talk about today, and ArcGIS Desktop, ArcObjects, and ArcGIS Engine. So we've actually published a few different articles on this, and we've got the product support lifecycle out there you can review. But I'd encourage you to just go take a look at this Arcmap continued support page. This has a summary of what I've just told you, and then it has a whole bunch of helpful resources to help you both get started moving and kind of explain why things are the way they are. So that's kind of why. Now I want to kind of go through some of the different strategies for planning for migration, things to help you guys get started. And we kind of have gone through this process with a lot of customers, and so we want to encourage you to kind of follow this workflow. The first thing is reviewing your workflows, reviewing all your existing workflows that you've been doing for years, and start playing with Arcmap and comparing those workflows, because or start playing with Arcgis Pro and comparing those workflows, because Arcgis Pro is a different animal. It's very different from Arcmap, and the workflows are going to be very different. Now, we believe all the tools are there, everything's there. You're going to see, you know, all the production mapping tools today. They're going to show you where those are at. Everything's there in terms of tooling for you to start migrating. It's just a matter of going through the process, and so we want to encourage you to get started. Next, you'll look at prioritizing and migrating those workflows. So I'll talk a bit about that. Then migration of, I know a lot of you have scripts and geoprocessing models that you've built in Arcmap that you'll want to migrate to Arcgis Pro. Then migration of add-ins. So this is your ArcObjects code needs to move to Arcgis Pro add-ins. And then I'll talk a bit about workforce development. Of course, workforce development is going to be probably your biggest investment here. The tools are new. Learning them is going to take some time, so keep that in mind. So I'll start by talking about reviewing and migration of your workflows. So I want you to think of this as an opportunity to review the current workflows you're going through. Are they still relevant? When you bring up Arcgis Pro, we've made a lot of changes, and we've tried to take into account things that will help streamline your workflows. And so in some cases, they may not still be relevant. In many cases, they'll need to be updated or changed. I want you to ask yourself at this point, looking at the new tools, is there a better way? Have I been doing this one way and there's a more efficient way I could be doing it? Then I want you to prioritize your workflows. Go through and find the ones that are the most complicated, the ones that are going to be harder to migrate, and tackle those first. Make sure you can get through those. And I find that this is, it's both a real advantage to get those kind of out of the way first, and it'll give you some confidence in the new tools. And it will also allow you to kind of get up to speed faster. And then the more kind of straightforward workflows can either come across in parallel as you're migrating those more complex workflows, or they'll come fast afterward once you get going. Next, to look at migrating any scripts and models you might have. So one of the big changes, pardon me, one of the big changes from Arcgis Pro and Arcmap is Arcgis Pro uses Python 3 and Arcmap uses Python 2. There are some changes that have taken place in Python between those releases. So another thing I'd encourage you to look at is something called 2 to 3. This is in the Python libraries. This will help you move from Python 2 to Python 3. It's a very handy little utility. There are also changes in how your Python might work because of changes we've made in our Python libraries. So ArcPy mapping has now become arcpy.mp, for example. So there'll be some code changes that will need to happen to account for those kinds of things. Then models you've created in desktop in Arcmap, those will migrate right in. You'll be able to open them in Pro and start using them right away. But keep in mind that once you start making changes to them, they don't go backward into Arcmap. So once they become Arcmap, or once they become Arcgis Pro models, they don't go backwards. There's also a few changes that might affect you as well. One of the things is support for visual basic expressions in Pro. In Pro, you'll end up using Python or Arcade. So if you've got some tools, for example, the calculate field tool, it's not going to support VB expressions if that's how you've done it in the past. So there's a lot of information out there on migrating your scripts and models. You'll also want to look at your custom code that you've written in ArcObjects. I want you to, first of all, ask yourself, once you look at Pro, do I still need this tool the same way I've had it in Arcmap? We've tried to take into account a lot of the things people were customizing when we when we built Pro and tried to put those right into the product. So there may be some cases you don't even need to migrate it. There are other cases where you'll want to, and in Pro we use add-ins, and we use those add-ins, and they're built using a new .NET SDK for ArcGIS Pro, which is a very nice managed API. It's not the huge ArcObjects model that you're used to, but it's much more efficient. It's a much easier way for developers to develop and build add-ins. So I'd encourage you to go in and look at the migration tools we have and the migration documentation. There's a lot in there to help you with that. There's also some additional sets of functionality in Pro that aren't in Arcmap that I want you to look at just in case you want to take advantage of those. One of those is called tasks. And tasks is a way to create a sequential set of steps in a repeatable workflow and play those back. So there's a little record button. You know, you've recorded macros in the past maybe, and it will record the steps you go through in a workflow, and then you can save those and share them with others in your organization and trade them around and get everybody using the same workflows. And there's a lot of efficiencies that can be built with that. Another thing we've added to Pro are notebooks. So these are Jupyter notebooks with Python. And these can be used to write Python code and repeat the same kind of analysis processes, the same sorts of processes that you use over and over again. You can use those in notebooks and repeat them that way. And finally, I wanted to talk a bit about workflow force development needs. Now, ArcGIS Pro is different. It is a different application than Arcmap, and this is going to require some of your staff to spend some time learning it. They're not going to have to relearn GIS. They're not going to have to relearn the concepts. All of those are the same. You've still got an add data button. You've still got a catalog pane. You've still got a table of contents. But they will need to understand the new workflows, and they're going to need to understand how to use the new user interface. And so we've provided a ton of resources for them. There are many, many things out here to help them get started. We've got training classes and videos. There are learn lessons. There's a migration guide and a terminology guide, blogs, books, the Esri community, developer resources, and of course the help documentation. So just one last thing I'd encourage you to do is, as you start your migration course, go to the Esri Academy and go download this ArcGIS Pro Migration Guide. And this is a 12-page document that goes through a whole bunch of resources, classes, many of them free. Actually, most of them are free, and it'll get you started in the right direction. So please go ahead and do that, and that should get you kicked off in the right way. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back to Mark.
Yes, thank you, David. And we're going to go to another set of poll questions. So just two poll questions here. These are multiple choice also. You can put in multiple answers here. So what are your biggest challenges in changing your workflows from Arcmap to ArcGIS Pro? All right. Looks like we had, we'll go ahead and close it out. We've got about 60% of you that have voted. And looks like clearly retraining your staff to the latest, to the ArcGIS Pro is the leading concern here. So updating your workflows and taking advantage of ArcGIS Pro tasks, half of you are looking at, and then we can see that about a quarter of you are looking at modifying scripts and also just the QC and QA of your data, because that's also have to think about changing as you change your scripts and tasks. So we've got one more question. Thank you for your answers on that. And we will look at trying to address some of these in our second portion. The next question we've got is how can Esri best support you in migrating from Arcmap to ArcGIS Pro? All right, I think we'll go ahead and close it out now. Thanks for your answers on that. We appreciate it. So it looks like actually the Esri virtual training looks like 3/4 of you would be interested in some training in some of these areas. So we'll definitely take that into consideration. That's very helpful for us. About 2/3 of you are looking at webinars like this one to do that, and about half of you are going to be looking at Esri on-site support. So that's helpful to know. And of course, if you have the Enterprise Advantage program, you can be working with your technical advisor on that. So thanks for your answers on that. We are going to continue on here. All right, Kelly, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Yep. Actually, I realized. I'm sorry. We're actually moving over to David right now. So, David, thanks for your. We're moving over to John. Thanks, David, for your presentation. I'd like to turn it over to John Grammer now, who's going to show you how you can streamline your workflows with Arcgis Production Manager and Defense Manager. John, sorry about that. Over to you.
No problem. Can you see my screen there?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Great. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk to you about extending your ArcGIS Pro production with using ArcGIS Production Mapping and ArcGIS Defense Mapping extensions. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm going to talk to you about using the ArcGIS Production and Defense Mapping extensions to help you extend your ArcGIS Pro production environment. We'll start off just kind of overview of the extensions and what comes with the extensions. We'll talk and touch about data capture, the data quality control tools that we have. We'll touch on also the multi-scale mapping. This is our data generalization inside of ArcGIS Pro. And then really just talk about some cartography workflows, and then how do we wrap all of these pieces together in our enterprise production management system that we provide with the extensions. So just kind of give you an overview of the extensions. Both extensions, ArcGIS Production Mapping and ArcGIS Defense Mapping, come on the desktop side, as you would know, with the Arcmap and also ArcGIS Pro, and then also with ArcGIS Enterprise. What we do provide on the system of record side, on the desktop side, we provide data models, predefined data models for different specifications. Also, those map templates that come with those specifications within ArcGIS Production and Defense Mapping. We have generalization tools, which we'll talk about. Also, the geoprocessing tools to help with the automation, and then bringing that all together using predefined workflows that we provide out of the box. On the enterprise side, it's really about sharing that data, right? Being able to edit that data with disconnected editing, maybe in some field workflows, being able to share that data with land operations, with services, and then really to be able to use some of the applications that we provide out of the box. We provide a self-serve mapping application, MPS, that allows you to do your cartography on the enterprise side, and then to really look at the management piece of your data currency and your production status. We have a production manager application that helps with that tracking throughout the production process. So kind of the extensions that we use. So throughout the session, we'll be discussing a number of these ArcGIS Pro extensions. Workflow Manager, which can be used to standardize your business processes. Data Reviewer, which can be used to validate that your data meets quality standards. And then the Production and Defense Mapping extensions, which are used to streamline data and map production in your workflows. So taking a look kind of at the overview of the production workflow, really what we'll touch on a little bit is the collect piece, so data capture and how we use the tools and validation within the collect aspect. All that is to be collected to your best scale data, right? So you're all collecting your best scale data, and then we're going to look at the producing aspect of the workflow, where we can either do some generalization into different scales to make those different cartographic products that you need. And then at the end, really, we'll bring it all together, looking at the workflows and automation that we provide with the extensions, right? To be able to manage these workflows, and then look at really the end piece where we can share that data using, the self-serve application. So talk about data capture and data maintenance. Within production mapping, We do have several tools that we add on to ArcGIS Pro. We do have some automated ways of data ingest, right? Being able to load data into different schemas and the ability to do that mapping. We have some tools that are particular to certain schemas that you can do automated data loading. As David was mentioning, we also use the common editing tools, right? So if you were existing user of production mapping, there was a set of editing tools all separated from Arcmap, but in ArcGIS Pro, we use the same editing tools. So the editing, their construction tools within ArcGIS Pro and the modify tools that are in Pro are all the same as everybody uses with Pro. We've done some additions. We've added a couple of the tools for productivity, which we'll kind of talk about later. You know, being able to do some topographic editing, topologic editing with a more powerful workflow. And then we also provide attribution templates for the schemas that we provide, right? So predefined edit templates. This just makes it a lot easier, so you can save these edit templates out that have predefined attribution on them. As in for data quality, we use ArcGIS Data Reviewer, and really with the ArcGIS Data Reviewer, we're able to do several different workflows. The automated review, being able to automate the checks for geometry and attribution. Using, if you're familiar with it in Arcmap, the reviewer batch jobs can be still used at Pro. So if you've developed some in your Arcmap days, you can bring those in and use them in ArcGIS Pro. And then with some of the new technology within the geodatabase, we're able to use attribute rules. These attribute rules can help with automating these checks with your data. The second part is really the semi-automated review. This is kind of the visual review of your data. So being able to make sure that the data fits within the sources that you're using, right? Being able to flag missing features within the map, or actually selecting existing features and flagging those. And in both of these automated and semi-automated reviews, the errors that are created are stored in a reviewer table. So if you're familiar with the ArcGIS Data Reviewer table, you can store those errors, and then the users can drive to each error, and the editor can then go back through and fix those errors. This kind of gets into the error management system of Data Reviewer, where we can store those errors, review them. It can be then sent to be corrected, and then sent back to the QA analyst for verification. And this kind of is this whole QC lifecycle within the Data Reviewer and your data. Let's try to touch on some multi-scale mapping. This is our data generalization, right? So with your collecting of the data, you want to collect that best scale data, but yet you need to collect or to produce those different scale products from that best scale data. Within ArcGIS Pro, we've automated this. So with automated generalization, you only need to maintain a single database at the best scale, and then automated models and scripts are used to create that data and produce the other output scales. For example, the set of generalization models that we have, we provide out of the box. With production mapping, we provide our civilian topo map at 10,000 scale, and we produce these files that can create the 50K scale data. With defense mapping, we have an MGCP and TDS, it's the Topographic Data Store, models that we go from 50K to 250K. And these generalization rule files are a part of the extension, and so is this one set of models, right? So the idea is that we only have to maintain one set of models to produce, to do this auto generalization. The nice thing is we do provide that template. So if you have your own schema, you can actually build that generalization rule file that then can be used with that set of models that we provide. Going into some of the cartography pieces, right? The cartography workflow is really about talking about that cartographic preparation of the data, producing that product, doing that cartographic refinement, and then publishing that final map. Within production mapping, we do have some tools, of course, to help create any of that data, whether you're collecting the data from scratch, or maybe you need to collect contours and spot heights. We have tools to do that. The generalizing of the data. So this is all about the data prep, right? So being able to get that data in that best scale to produce those map products. Then really looking at the production piece, we have some geoprocessing tools that allow you to create that map, right? To make sure that you symbolize that data, use the right layout files, and get maybe some grids and some other cartographic functionality with the maps around. And then there is also, taking the tools that we have in Arcgis Pro and extending them for feature offsets. We have tools to automatically offset bridges and culverts and buildings from your road features. And then in Arcgis Pro for production mapping, we've added the ability for masking, applying masks and creating masks based on feature and color within the tools that we have. And then it's just using the Arcgis Pro publishing, export, being able to export your maps in the same format that allowed from Arcgis Pro. On the enterprise side, we've taken that cartography piece and really brought out a self-serve map application. So it's a portal configurable app that goes through that cartographic workflow and really just allows a self-serve out of the box, creates the map exports. Whether you want the PDF export or maybe you want the export in a map package, which we provide either an APRX or a PageX with a file geodatabase extracted from the server. And really the tools allows you to manage those exports within the self-serve application. All right, so I'm going to kind of turn that over now. I'm going to turn this over to GC, and we're going to talk a little bit about the production management and how we bring all these things together with the different extensions we have.
Okay, yeah, thanks, John. So yeah, John mentioned a bunch of tools. Yeah, how do we build those into repeatable workflows that streamline and automate? That's what the production management piece is about. So we use Workflow Manager to do that. And Workflow Manager allows you to take something that looks like this, like a basic GIS workflow, maybe like an SOP you have on paper, and actually integrate it into the software. So it can actually ask me questions and then branch based on my decision. It can run automated processes like geoprocessing, script tools. It can create versions automatically in the database. It can launch applications for me, so editing and QCing data in Pro or launching third-party apps as well. Along the way, it's documenting everything that happens. Who ran which step, was it successful, what time, also capturing logs along the way. And then it can also notify at any point in the process via email. So this is Arcgis Workflow Manager. Now in production mapping, we have workflows that come out of the box using Workflow Manager here, but they're designed for topographic production. So the benefits are kind of here in the bullet points. Increasing productivity, number one. We're automating lots of steps in geoprocessing. Some entire workflows are automated. Jobs are created automatically by the background process when ready. We're building in quality by making sure that those quality control steps happen in the workflow. You can see all those production properties there, all those paths in the screenshot. Those are not set by the users. Those are set automatically by the workflow. So it ensures that everyone has the right data, right parameters for their tools. We can even ensure the edits are within our geographic area of interest. And then the workflows also manage the data updates. So check in, check out, reconcile, and post. That's all fully automated in these workflows in production mapping. So what do you get out of the box? In the production mapping product data installer, you get workflows for data editing, which can actually use our defined schemas in defense mapping or your own data schemas. Cartographic production workflows, which are a little more tailored to those key products as MTM, TM, JOG-A, CTM products we support in defense and production mapping out of the box, and some other workflows to help you ingest data, data generalization. So that's fully automated workflows running those models for generalization that John mentioned. We get sample user groups as well. in the top right. So it's a role-based system. We have some groups for you to start with there. We also have tools to help you deploy and configure the system along with a deployment guide. So that's what comes out of the box with the production workflows. And I'm going to take over the screen here and show a little bit of the software here. So we've seen a lot of PowerPoint so far. All right, so you should see ArcGIS portal.
We see it.
For topographic mapping. Awesome. Okay, so one of the portal configurable apps that comes with production mapping for server is the Production Manager app. So I'm going to open that one now. Now this ties us into the workflow system through the web. So this is kind of designed for management users, executives, but it's all tied in live to the same system using Workflow Manager for server. So I can pick a query here, and I've got some production already defined here. I can build these queries out without any coding here. I'm going to zoom to my open extraction jobs. This is MGCP. It's a common data schema for defense users. It's often used for humanitarian needs as well. So I've got a bunch of production here over Haiti happening. You can see I've got all of the whole table here of all the data production that's happening. I can click on any of these and get a pop-up. This is just a live look at what's kind of happening on the technician side. So you can see that this job is 50% complete. It's data information, all the basics there. I may have, obviously, in this type of system, hundreds of jobs. So instead of just clicking around each one, I can kind of view them in a more thematic way here using some pie charts. So I can see schedule status, so which jobs are kind of on time, behind schedule, and past due. Job type, so I can see which jobs are in data maintenance versus quality control here. And so I can isolate those as well, which is really handy when I come over to something like schedule status, where I'm really most interested maybe, in that job that's kind of already past due, right? And so I could kind of drill deeper on this job if I like. And again, it's just looking at everything live that the technicians are doing. So it's the same tables behind the scenes, and I'm getting a live look here at this job. And so I can see all of the details here on this job, all the key paths. I can also change any of this as well. So I could reassign the jobs to a different user if I wanted, change date information. Also, a lot of basic workflow manager abilities here, like adding notes, attachments, and such. I can also create new production through this app as well. So if I'd like to create new MGCP data production, I can do that here. So I can set some basic data information. You see my grids pop up for my production, so I can define what my unit of measure is here for my jobs. And I can create one or two or multiple jobs here and kick that off. So really quick example there, but when I do that, a lot of automation's happening behind the scenes here. So for data production jobs, replicas are being created automatically by the background process. For cartographic jobs, we have a lot of those tools that John mentioned. Those tools are running automatically behind the scenes. So that happens before the users even come in, and the technicians really get to work on the job. Lots of automation happening behind the scenes. So that's a really quick look through the web. I'm going to just minimize this and jump into Pro briefly. We've got Workflow Manager here. This is the kind of the technician view, and Workflow Manager here is built right into Pro. So it's not a separate application. It's built right into Pro. So I've got queries on the left that control what jobs I see here on the right. So I can see cartography jobs, data maintenance jobs. I can jump to my jobs, which is probably most important for most technicians, right? I want to see what's assigned to me. I've got a quality control job here already assigned to me. And so the active step here is in red. I'm going to launch this step. And this is going to open my map. You can see that step there. So it's going to open my map for quality control. What's happened already on the workflow is that I've copied the files locally, automatically to my C drive, and the map's been resourced for me. So that's optional. I don't have to do that, but it allows me a quick way to automatically pull my data and map down to my local machine. So you can see I'm zoomed to my area of interest here. I've got my data, again, automatically resourced to my local machine here. I've got my symbology loaded for my organization. So I'm going to zoom to an area here and just talk through just briefly a couple of the tools here. So as John and David mentioned, we have this Arcgis Pro, for example, modified tools. And this is one kind of integrated framework for editing, right? So a lot of the production mapping tools that used to exist on separate toolbars are built into these tools in Pro. A lot of that functionality, like the clip tool and the generalize tool, things that we liked from production mapping are just built right into these tools in Arcgis Pro. So there are definitely less tools to learn, which is nice from a retraining standpoint. Now, same idea when I'm creating data. So if I click the Create tab, you see these predefined edit templates. Now, these are for defense schemas. These come in defense mapping built for TDS and MGCP, right? So they're already built out for you. If you don't use these schemas, you can easily build your own, though. And so it allows me to say, pick, for example, a school here and have attributes already defined. See, my feature function is education, fully functional. It matches this this predefined template, again, that basically matches the MGCP product specification. So these are already built for you for defense mapping, but like I said, you can build your own for your own schemas. And it's really that point and click editing. So that's kind of a very quick example of kind of some of the edit tools here, and then some of the predefined edit templates. So we're running a little short on time. I'm going to jump ahead here to the data reviewer piece. So John had mentioned for quality control, there's data reviewer. Defense mapping comes with all these batch checks, RBJ files for MGCP and TDS. But you can also just bring in your own RBJ files, reviewer checks from Arcmap, and you can run those checks here easily, just right-clicking and choosing your area. And then once you have some results, you can open those in the data reviewer table here. And so very similar to Arcmap, you get your reviewer table. You can zoom around to any errors that have been found. And so this is all tied into the workflows. So as you can see, job 1632 is here. It's already got this reviewer session built automatically for it. So it's kind of all connected for you automatically. So jumping ahead, we've seen just a little of the data editing piece. And for cartography, John mentioned a bunch of tools for producing those TM and MTM defense products. We have a workflow that does this automatically. So you can see this workflow is 100% complete. It's already run. This is what was kicked off automatically on the server. And it goes through the process of extracting data, creating some contours and spot heights, running the generate product layout tool to actually create the layout, and then running the post-processing. So these are all the tools that John mentioned, and those are here in the Topographic Production toolbox. So they're all right here. Now you can obviously run those manually. You could probably run them in models as well. This workflow just kind of comes pre-built for you if you implement our production mapping workflows and workflow manager. Otherwise, you can run these tools manually. The power of the workflows is it's automated. It takes all of these properties that are set up at deployment, and that's kind of how it pre-populates all those GP tools for you. And so once that's run automatically, the next workflow is really for the technician to do the cartographic production. But they have a really great starting point for it. So the workflow that comes after that one is what you see on the screen here. And I've already run the open layout step, and this is kind of what comes out. So this is the result of all that automation. This is a TM50K map. And you can see here, we've built all of this out for Arcgis Pro. We've got the base map data frame. We've got our layers. This should look familiar to makers of TM50s or MTM50s. You can also see, if you look at the symbology here, we've moved this to Arcade here in ArcGIS Pro. So basically, you're getting some queries here already built for you that apply, this specific symbol from the style. So this is already built for you if you're a TM and MTM producer. If you're not, and you do use visual specifications for your schemas, we do have a tool called Apply Visual Spec to Map here. This one will basically take your VST from Arcmap and create those queries from the VST for your layers. So it's going to kind of give you a starting point like we have here for these TM and MTM products, but for your VST files. So that's a really quick whirlwind tour, I'd say, through the workflows for production and defense mapping. I think at this point, I'd turn it back to Mark for the wrap up.
All right, great. Thank you, GC and John. Appreciate that. And as they mentioned, we did cover a lot of material, and there's so much more to cover. We are planning on doing more in this webinar series on national mapping strategies for ArcGIS Pro. So be looking for those in the first and second quarter of next year, and we'll go into a deeper dive on some of these things that we've been talking about. So what I'd like to cover right now is just some takeaways for all of us as we start to close out here and move to our Q&A. So really, what have we learned in our time here? We now understand that we can be more relevant and responsive and cost-effective to our customers, our key stakeholders and decision makers. We can modernize by leveraging the latest GIS technology with ArcGIS Pro. And we can automate and streamline our staff's workflows and tasks with ArcGIS production mapping and defense mapping. But we'd like you to hear this from more than just us here. So I pulled up a couple of what some of our customers have said, and this is actually their slides, their words. So some of the national mapping and geospatial authorities, in this case, the Dutch Cadastre, which is the land registry, and the mapping agency of the Netherlands. I actually pulled this from their Esri user conference in 2018. So 3 years ago, they were adopting ArcGIS Pro. And some of the things that they said in that presentation were, it was Taco Breiber that did the presentation, and he kind of summarized it with these points, that they've been able to really cut out most of the customization that they've had to do with their software, really doing more configuration. They were able, during the process of migrating from Arcmap to ArcGIS Pro, to continuously deliver their products. So it was a seamless delivery product, even though they were transitioning their production. They were able to automate their testing processes, some of what John was showing earlier. And they automated their generalization using Python, like David talked about earlier. And their core largest, best scale database is the Topographic 1 to 10,000 scale from the Netherlands, the top 10 NL processes, and they're using ArcGIS Pro to do that, and have been for quite a while. So it's it's no longer an enabler; it's a driver. So what he said, what Taco had said was they were able to reduce the custom software, they were able to improve performance, and they were able, most importantly, to future-proof the production environment in their organization. And they were able to deliver a production application that was the best possible for the business to improve their processes and deliver their product faster. And I've got one other customer I'll go to before we get to our Q&A here. So I'd like to turn to the Ordnance Survey, the National Mapping Agency of Great Britain, and the benefits that they realized when they used ArcGIS Pro for their what they call their digital transformation. And the automated map production, it improved their product currency from many derived products, such as their 1 to 10,000 scale vector map local, from a 3-year currency to a 3-month currency. And that allowed 20 of their staff to be redeployed into other areas where work was needed. It enables them to collect once and use many times, with multiple derived products from one master database of over 750 million features. It's the largest geospatial database on Earth. And it allows them to generate these maps, the various colored maps and black and white maps, as well as full data sets, as well as change-only products. And they improve the currency of their data, and they increase their relevancy to their customers, as they said, to government, from local all the way through national government, emergency services, utilities, and partners. So their return on investment was about $1 million a year in cost savings. That was just in their workflow management. They're also looking to realize $1.5 million US dollars a year in additional cost savings in their supply chain management. They were able to automate the production of a number of their products, 100% automation of their large-scale databases. One example is the OS land parcel polygon data. It used to take them 6 to 8 weeks to produce with some manual intervention, and now it's done in 14 hours, and it's completely automated for the whole country. And the quote that we had from the CEO at the time was that these are not insignificant financial changes, but actually the real benefits come to the customers through enhanced product quality and currency. So just lastly, I want to leave you with some resources. Probably not time to jot all these down, but this video is being recorded and it will be available, and you can access these links to Arcgis Pro, to the production and defense mapping, to the Esri communities that exist around these communities, these areas, as well as some national mapping resources. So with that, I want to move to our Q&A time, and we'll take some questions. We've already got some questions here, and we've got a question here from one of the largest barriers for me is just the time it takes to learn new software. So I think all of us are kind of challenged with that. David, do you want to address just kind of quickly how you might be able to shorten the timeline on some of the the learning of the new Arcgis Pro?
Sure. No, that's actually a great question, and we've actually been through this process a lot with a lot of users. Pro has been out there for more than 6 years now, and so we've gone through this over and over again. And what we find is we get the same feedback every time. It takes about 2 days to really get going, which isn't a terrible amount of time, but it does require you to carve some out. And what we find is the first day people get a little frustrated, to be honest. Things have moved, things are in different places. It's hard to find the tools that you're used to. By the second day, you start getting, to where you can figure out where things are. And by the third day, we usually hear something like, oh, wow, this is so much better. Never make me go back to that other software again. But that does take some time. There are a lot of resources out there to help you. Like I said, there's one of my favorites is there's a Learn lesson on the Learn site, which is just getting started with Pro. It's free. It's got some, easy to use or easy to take lessons with some data and helpful things. And then another thing is there are some bigger ways to do this and jump in. One is the Cartography Mooc. This is available to everyone to go through. It has exercises. It goes through all the cartography tools in Arcgis Pro, and it's a great resource. So there are many other ways to kind of take this up and do it, but you really just need to get started.
All right, thank you, David. So let's see, we've got a few more questions. Please be putting your questions into the questions chat, and we'll get to those. The next questions are about nautical data. So in addition to the production mapping and defense mapping that you saw earlier, Esri also has ArcGIS maritime charting and ArcGIS maritime bathymetry products. We also have similar for aviation. So the question here is, do you have any courses, especially for nautical charts, generalization tools? We do have training across many of the things that you saw today. John, I don't know if you want to mention specifically kind of the training for production mapping as well as, maritime.
Sure, Mark. Really what it is that I think what we can do is send out information about the maritime itself. Maritime has its own training and they have moved to Arcgis Pro, so they do have workflows for producing those nautical charts and nautical data within Arcgis Pro. So I think, Mark, the best thing, we can either send out the links to the maritime team and they can get a hold of them to get that information.
Okay, great. And we are starting to run out of time, but I'm going to take, we've got a couple, another question here. And then if you can always send us your questions later on. Actually, we've got another question that's coming in. We'll stay on and answer these. But we also do want to, as I do that, I do want to mention that there will be at the end of this webinar a survey for you to take, and we please would invite you to just take a couple minutes to complete that survey. And it does give you the opportunity to ask if you want some additional contact from Esri, you want additional information, and so we encourage you to take that and let us know what you'd like to see in future webinars. We'd be interested in that. So another question is on the automated cartographic generalization model. Will that work with nautical data based and produce multiple scale nautical charts? John, I think I'm going to give this to you or GC if you guys want to take that question.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think within the maritime extension, they'll give you the idea of how you can actually produce the different nautical charts and the nautical data with the different scales within their NIS, their nautical information system. So again, I think what we need to do is actually, give the links out to the people who are interested in the nautical stuff for the maritime team.
Okay, yeah, just indicate that into your survey, and we will get back to you with that. So last question here. So what is your experience with national mapping and regions with topographic areas that are very difficult? For example, in the Andes in South America. John, I know your team you and GC have worked on a lot of tough areas in production. Not just creating the software, but these guys actually do the work also. And John, maybe you want to address that, the different topographies and geographic regions, and how you address that.
Yeah, actually, I might just throw that over to GC and let him talk about his experience in that kind of production area.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have customers all over the world, national mapping agencies actually in those mountainous regions. Yeah, our tools for generate topographic contours and spot heights are pretty uniform. I mean, there's always additional work in high elevation areas, that just more spot heights that need to be on the map for peaks, and maybe more water gaps going through contours that need to be aligned manually. So there tends to be a little more manual work in those high elevation regions, but the tools are used kind of really all over the world with national mapping agencies, defense and civilian. So I mean, there's a lot of experience out there with these tools in all sorts of regions.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, GC. I know you guys have real world experience with that. I can actually specifically tell you that the National Mapping Agency in Chile, IGM, have been using our software for many years. They mapped the entire country at 125,000 scale. And of course, they have a big section of the Andes, as well as EGAC in Colombia, longtime user of Esri, and over 25 years they've been using it, because I've been at Esri for 20, 25, 26 years, and I know they've been using it that long. And of course, they have the Andes in there. So with that, I think we are going to close up. We please again take the survey, and we thank you all for joining. And I want to say thanks to our presenters and turn it back over to Kelly.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. And again, big thank you to our presenters today. We appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for all to all who have joined us today. And as Mark mentioned, all of the resources that you've seen in the slides today, so any of the links, we will make those available for all of you along with the recording location. And then as soon as we close out here, you'll see a survey pop up on your screen. If you could take a few moments to complete that, we would be appreciative. And with that, thank you so much. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thank you.